Um, so I want to wish you all a happy Mother's Day, of course. And I want to tell you a story or two about my mom. And you may have heard this another time I was there, but being Mother's Day, I thought it's certainly appropriate to tell it again. So my mom at one point was living in an independent living facility, and every time she went to the doctor, she would have a van pick her up, and then when she was done, the van would come and get her again. Well, one night she's at the doctor's office. It's about 6 o'clock at night, and the van doesn't show up. So the receptionist said, Mrs. Klein, I can't let you wait here. I've got to close the office. The doctor has an appointment. But I'll tell you what, I'll take you downstairs. There's a pizza place. I'll buy you a Coke. I'll call the van. I'll make sure they're coming. So they did that. And my mom waited and waited and waited. And the van never showed up. So my mom went up to the guy at the counter and said, do you deliver? And he said, yeah, we're a pizza place, lady. Of course we deliver. And she said, great, I want a pepperoni pizza and I want to go with it. Um, so my mom had a great sense of humor and I think it rubbed off a little on me. But I also have a story about my mom in the new book, The Awe Factor, that I want to share with you because she had her awe moment in this story. She was 82 and she had never flown before. She lived in New York City and she was a volunteer for City of Hope. And she raised a lot of money, perhaps the leading person raising money in that area. And they were having a convention in Los Angeles and they gave her a free plane ride to go to the convention. She hemmed and hawed about going, getting on a plane, but finally she went to LA. And I said, Ma, I'm in San Francisco. You gotta, it's an hour flight, less than an hour. You gotta come and visit. No, 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 Alan, I'm not coming. I'm not. Finally, I convinced her and I met her getting off the plane. And I said, Ma, how did you like the flight? And she said, it was incredible. She said, you could see the tops of the clouds. And I thought that was her awe moment, seeing the tops of the clouds. If we don't fly, nobody sees the tops of the clouds. And so that was her awe moment. So in what I want to talk to you about today and what I have in the book is what is awe. So we'll look at a little bit about what is awe, why it's important, why you need to kind of up it in your life, I guess, and also how to be more aware and get more awe in your life. So when I was writing the book, I took my former literary agent out for coffee and I told him what I'm doing. He thought it was an interesting project, but he asked me a really important question for the book. He said, Alan, what is awe? And I kind of thought a while and I gave him an answer that wasn't quite right on. And I just start writing the book and start thinking about that question. And what I discovered that awe had so many aspects to it that it was hard to really define. For instance, the dictionary defines it as reverence combined with fear and wonder. And I thought, when I read that, I thought, fear? It doesn't make sense to me. But then I realized that lightning and thunder could produce fear. When I was a little kid, I would love the lightning. It kind of lit up the dark sky and the patterns. It was wonderful. But the thunder made me hide under the blanket because it frightened me. So yes, there was fear in awe. The second definition was from scientists and researchers. And they say that what awe is when we see something so vast, so enormous, like the Grand Canyon, that it kind of changes our view of the world, changes our perspective of the world. And we get a whole different sense of ourselves and who we are in the world. So that's the scientific definition. and you heard the dictionary definition. I have a third definition that I've come up with, and that is whenever you experience awe, normally you see something that like knocks your socks off, or you go, "Oh my God," um, or you go, I can't believe that happened. That was amazing." So I've come up with my own little definition. Actually, it's actually an acronym of awe, AWE. In my world, stands for a wow experience. AWE, a wow experience. And for me, that is what awe is. When we have that kind of, when we go, wow, we're having an awe experience. Um, so why is it important? Well, there's a lot of, not a lot of research, but only in the last 10 years have they really start looking into the benefits of awe and wonder and why it is so important and why we should get more of it in our life. So I want to share one piece of research that just came out last September that I think is really important for all of us. And what they did, what the researchers did, is they took a group of 56 people, and these are mostly older people, 60, 70, 80, and they divided them into two groups. And they told both groups the same thing. They wanted them to once a week, just once a week, 15 minutes a week for 8 weeks to go and take a walk. Get out of the house, go take a walk. It was as simple as that. But the second group, they took aside and they said, when you go for the walk, I want you to find something that awes you, that makes you feel, maybe tingly, that you go, wow. And maybe even take a picture of it and notice how you're feeling at that time. So they did this for 8 weeks, 15 minutes once a week, went for a walk. One group just went for the walk. The other group thought about finding something that awed them. After 8 weeks, they tested both groups. And what they found was the group that found some awe said they were less, found that they had less negative emotions and more positive emotions. They said they were more connected to their environment and to other people. It said they were less upset and that they were happier. The other group that were not told to find any awe, they said things like, I was walking, I didn't really notice stuff, and I was thinking about, oh, I'm taking a trip next week and I haven't packed and I've got to still buy stuff and I'm not sure I'm going to be ready. They were constantly thinking about some of the stress in their life. So I thought, what an incredible study, because particularly during this pandemic time, we're all kind of focusing on negative stuff. And here it is. All we need to do is once a week, 15 minutes a week, change our focus, and that could help us be happier and healthier. So that's just one study. There are others, but I won't go into that today. So the biggest generator, the number one generator of awe, if you want more awe in your life, is go in nature. I want to show you some slides here about going into nature. Look at this and see how you feel. Or look at this slide. Amazing. Nature is amazing. Or look at this one. Now, my definition of fear and wonder, this certainly, every time I look at this, my stomach drops. Fear and wonder. The other thing I wonder, whatever that word is how did those people get there? And I'm glad it's them and not me. So there is a little bit of nature, and the interesting thing about another study is it said you do not have to be in those kind of environments to get some of those same benefits. If you just have a picture or you write about a past experience you've had that awed you, that lifted you up in some way, that brings back some of those same emotions. So a couple of weeks ago, I had this iris in my garden, and I took a picture of it. And it's just every time I look at it, I am in awe. I put it on Facebook, and somebody said it looks like a dancing flower. But the color, the shapes, the lines, it's just awed me. So I keep that around and get just that little bit of awe every single day. And you can do the same thing. So that's nature is the number one generator of awe, but there's also man-made awe. And one of the stories in the book, one of my favorite stories, is one I heard on the radio related to man-made awe. And it was three prisoners who were getting out of prison one day, and a reporter was out front, and he asked each one, "What are you looking forward to when you leave prison?" And the first one said, which is natural probably, "I'm looking forward to being with my family. I haven't seen them in a long time, and I'm really anxious to be with them." Second prisoner said, "I love baseball games and I haven't been able to see one in over 10 years." He said, "I'm looking forward to going to a baseball game." And the third one said, "I'm looking forward to opening the refrigerator." This was his odd thing to open the refrigerator. And I thought, this is kind of crazy. What a crazy answer. But then I thought, he was not able to open the refrigerator or get a glass of milk or water or piece of fruit for years and years and years. And so here was an inanimate object, an object that we see every day that does not awe us, probably, um, that really wowed him. So what I found is that awe is often in the eyes of the beholder. You may not see a refrigerator as filled with awe, or like my mom, the clouds. Maybe you fly a lot and tops of the clouds don't awe you. So it's sometimes in the eyes of the beholder. So what you think is awe may not be what I think is awe. The other thing that has awed us in years past, and in fact right now, is space travel. So a couple of slides to illustrate that. Imagine putting a man on the moon. Is that not filled with awe? Or what about landing on Mars? Was it the Mars rover? I think so. Or having people now living out in space, the space station. Just this week, one of the astronauts had been on the space station for what was it, 5.5 months. I mean, that is something, we only thought would happen in movies when I was growing up. And here we are, people living out there in space and existing. Quite awesome. So the second generative R, I wonder, I'll give you a couple of seconds. Think of what the second biggest generative R might be. A lot of you probably thought of it. It's childbirth or being around babies, um, like these babies. And I can almost hear you, although the sound is muted. Some of you are going, "Oh," right? We can't help it. It just like really, it touches us. Somehow that face, the big eyes, it touches us. So what I also discovered about awe is that it comes in all shapes and sizes. Um, like I've labeled awe in the book, and one of them is chance meeting awe. Uh, it just, you kind of never know when it comes in different shapes and sizes. For example, I was years ago, I was climbing up a path to Vernal Falls in Yosemite, And coming down the other path, going down, somebody looks across the way and goes, Alan. And I looked and I didn't recognize him. And he said, I'm John. He said, I was an apprentice of yours in summer stock 40 years ago. I thought, this is amazing. This is an awe moment. I mean, what are the chances of us meeting on top of, top of the world, at top of the mountain? Um, just at that moment. Had I turned one way or looked the other way or he did, we would have never seen each other. That for me is an awe moment. So one of my points is that awe moments are all around us and we need to pay more attention to them. Um, and usually we don't know where or when it's going to happen. So I have two stories related to unity in my book, and I want to share one of them. I want to read one of them with you, and then I'll share the other one with you. This I call a gift from God. Last evening, I attended a class in which we were discussing the connection between giving and taking. During the discussion, a disheveled young man entered the room. Both the teacher and Robert, a student in the class, went to see he was and what he wanted. The teacher came back to continue teaching the class while Robert continued to interact with the stranger. At one point, they both left the building. About 10 minutes later, Robert came back and told a remarkable story of what happened. It seems the unkempt stranger was walking the streets hoping to find some solace in a church. But being nighttime, they were all closed. He passed our spiritual center, Unity San Francisco, and walked in thinking we were having a service. In chatting with him, Robert found out that he needed $18 to get to Fresno, where he said he could get some sort of housing. He stated that the check was being sent there for some work he had done, but he couldn't get it until he checked into his living quarters. Like many of us may feel when someone asks for a handout, Robert initially felt that he was being taken. Maybe this hardship story wasn't true at all. Maybe he didn't really need the money. Maybe he repeats the same woe is me story to a lot of people. Nevertheless, Robert didn't listen to those negative thoughts, especially after the class was just discussing inner-centered giving, which involves giving without expecting anything in return. After much trouble getting the ATM machine across the street to work, Robert withdrew $20. He gave it to the young man who went on his way. When Robert returned to the class, found a number of remarkable things in what happened. Among them was that the young man, who could have asked for any amount of money, only requested $18. What is so amazing is that in the Jewish tradition, the number 18, Chai in Hebrew, is the word for life. And in the plural form, Chaim, is often used in a toast, L'chaim, meaning to life. Robert also told us that the man's name was Matthew, one of the 12 apostles whose name means gift of God. The appearance of the man, just as we were discussing the act of giving and all the ramifications, seems so impeccably timed that we joked with the teacher about having hired an actor to provide the perfect illustration for the lesson. Of course, that wasn't true, but it provided a bit of levity to what seemed like a somewhat mysterious occurrence. After the class, I kept wondering if this was a scam or not. When I got back home, I checked to see if there was a train from San Francisco to Fresno at 1:15 in the morning, the time Matthew said it would be leaving. There wasn't. And in addition, there wasn't any train either during the daytime or at night that cost anywhere near $18. So who knows if Matthew is telling the truth or not? But somehow it didn't matter. It was a very small price to pay for such a great example of giving. And who knows, maybe he indeed was a gift from God. So, I see that as higher power awe is what I call it, that we don't know when things like this happen. And again, important to pay attention to them. So another thing that happened at Unity, I had a cousin of a cousin that I was friends with. He passed away, and I did not expect this, but I got a nice five-figure check from his inheritance. Never expected this at all. And it's my practice to give a tithe of 10% to Unity. So my check was for four figures. And I'm sitting in service, and the basket's coming closer and closer, and I am sweating profusely. I am going to put this large amount of money in the basket, and I'm freaking out. I mean, I'm thinking, I can go to Hawaii for a couple of weeks with this. I can buy that, really expensive suit. I can eat in a high class San Francisco restaurant for every, one night a week for the year. And it's getting closer and closer. And finally, it's at my lap, and I put it in. The basket gets passed on. And I will tell you, I have never felt so elated. I was just flying around the room. It was so joyous. It was so amazing. It was such an awe moment for me. I still remember that feeling in my body. It was like pure ecstasy. And I guess I realized that I could help others. I didn't miss this money. I could be generous. You know, I met, my promise, whatever it was, I don't know, but it was that incredible awe moment for me that just kind of blew me away. It was a wow, it's definitely a wow experience. Um, so I want to look at now how you could be more aware of getting more awe in your life. So I have five ways. One is be curious. Be like a child, not childlike, but like a child. Zen calls it beginner's mind. I remember I was sitting in a restaurant in Petaluma, and outside I was having lunch. My dog, golden retriever, big tail, fluffy tail, was with me on the other side of the fence. And this little boy, maybe 2 years old, came by. He saw the tail was wagging, and he went over and tried to grab the tail, but every time he tried to grab it, the dog kind of moved away. And the kid would just start laughing hysterically. And then he even went closer to get the tailwind in his face and the tickle. And it was just such a joyous moment. And I was amazed how he was so entertained and so amazed. And he was, in a sense, awed by the dog's tail. So be curious. He was curious about this. Be curious about your world. I know when I go travel in Europe before COVID, I would love getting lost. I would just that curious sense, and there'll be so many amazing things when you get lost that you find intentionally lost. The other thing, talking about intention, is set out like in that awe walk study, they intended to find some awe. The other group had not that intention. If you intend to find it, you will find it. So I remember, again, before COVID, I took a class called Wonder Hunt. It was a 2 week class, and every day we were instructed to go out and find this one particular thing for that day. And that day was to find things in the shape of hearts. And I came back from walking my dog, and I had never noticed this for weeks, but I had planted morning glories around my gate. and every leaf was heart-shaped. I had been going in and out, several times a day, never noticed this until my intention was to find it. So look for awe. Chances are you will find it. And speaking about looking, that's the third thing. Look at stuff. Take time to look at stuff. Not just look, but look closer. I'll show you some slides of what I'm talking about. So flowers are great, particularly tulips, but you really don't see the awe part of them until you look inside a tulip. Look at those colors. Look at the shape, the yellows and the way they're laid out and the way they come out of it. And then look at this tulip, one of my favorites. Truly, truly amazing. And then listen. Just stop and listen. I have a friend who in traffic, she listens to all the traffic sounds and kind of makes a symphony out of it. I want to read you a very short piece about listening. This is not what I wrote. This is from Sam Keen, the writer. And he says, after a long, cold night and no breakfast, we heard a male bird advertise his virility by the intensity and vigor of his song. Different species of birds and insects roused themselves from sleep at different intervals and began warming up their vocal cords. At first, a few of the featured soloists and supporting vocalists began rehearsing. A host of song sparrows practiced the soprano melody. Purple finches and lesser sparrows added chirps, tweets, twitters. Mourning doves crooned the antiphonal moan. Ubiquitous crows provided the caws and cackles. The woodpeckers delivered the percussion. As the morning began to warm up, insects beyond number furnished a rich drone composed of hums, buzzes, and swirl of wings. All of this was accompanied by the sighing of the wind and the gurgling of the brook. A few minutes after full dawn arrived, the cacophony seemed to end, and the 1,000 individual creatures began to tune their instruments in a single complex pattern. Gradually, an individual conductor forged the discord into a unified composition. Symphony in the meadow of Sugarloaf Mountain that lasted until the sun was high and hot. So just stop and listen. There are sounds, there are symphonies all around you. Stop and listen. And then have reminders around. A real simple one is maybe get a card, put the letter A on it, and keep it in your pocket. Whenever you feel it in your pocket, just stop and look for the awe that is around you. Also, as a writer, I love words, and in Unity, we know affirmations work. So I have an awe affirmation I'd like to share with you. I allow awe and wonder to effortlessly enter my life. Why don't we all say that together with me? I allow awe and wonder to effortlessly enter my life. And I want to show you a short movie because one of the things, a very short film, one of the things that we don't pay attention to, we have all the time awe related, is the human body. It is such an amazing piece of equipment.
You know, the expression I use is I say we're all masterpieces and works in progress simultaneously. So to be human is to be extraordinary. I have a quote which says, even on your worst day, you're a living miracle. If you think about the trillions of reactions that are happening just within the biochemistry of our physicality, it's overwhelming. That we can eat food with friends at a dinner table and our body will take care of the process of digestion, when to secrete the bile from the bile duct, when to release more hydrochloric acid to break down the food. The mechanisms that then have to actually occur as it goes through the small intestine, food is separated, absorbed, and then it's taken to the cellular level, and there's all of this metabolism that takes place at an even deeper level, so that the apple that you just ate at some point will become a liver cell. I mean, that is just mind-blowing, like magic, right? Yet we don't think about it. So when you really understand the endless myriad of transactions that are happening in the human brain and the human body that actually gives us the experience of being alive, it's humbling. You kind of can't help but feel a sense of gratitude and grace by virtue of the fact that I have a human. As a human, I have the capacity to see the people I love. I have the capacity to communicate the way that I feel about myself, life, and others. The fact that I can smell, the sense that I can hear the dulcet tones of a loved one or a child telling me what they feel. And I can taste the extraordinary abundance of these different flavors that we get to experience by virtue of Mother Nature. Just those 5 senses that we take for granted every day. From when you really get it, it becomes impossible to not revere life, your own and others, to recognize what an immaculate conception every being is, by virtue of the gift that it is that we get to experience life at all. Being human is the opportunity. And so when you recognize that by virtue of your birth, by virtue of being here, and again, I am not in any way diminishing or dismissing the hardship that many people go through. There are people literally starving. I can talk about the joys of tasting food, and people are like, well, that's great for you. I don't have any. And so that is something that collectively we have to do a better job of, right? There is such an equality. That is, to me, something that really hit home many years ago, was that just to be alive is itself a miracle. And from that moment forth, I stopped berating myself. I'm not perfect. And there's so much humility and patience that we can develop when we understand that and then afford others. If we could afford each other just a little bit more patience, a little bit more compassion, a little bit more empathy for the fact that it is difficult, it is sometimes challenging to take on a new task, and that's okay, then that again would make for a much more loving and accepting society. But within that, we never neglect the magic that it is to be a human being, and honestly, to be any form of life.
So what I found,
The expression I use is I say we're all masterpieces.
Sorry. So what I found after all this research, what awe is the presence of the divine in the universe. It is in us, it is all around us. Awe is the presence of the divine in the universe. Let us take that to a time of our meditation. If you would feel comfortable closing your eyes and just take a few deep breaths. And know that you are connected to life, connected to everyone, connected to the universe by the breath you are taking. This one breath is what is keeping us alive. If that's not awe, full of awe, I don't know what is. Our body itself, if you're quiet enough, you can hear the blood beating in your heart, nourishing your whole body. That I could talk to you, that you could hear me. It's all a miracle. It's all amazing. It's all wonder. So just know that. Know what a miracle to live is. Know that everything around us is a miracle. To stop, to look, to listen, because it's all there for us when we do. So just take another couple of deep breaths. And know perhaps that when you open your eyes, you're going to see the world in a whole new way. So three more breaths, and then on the third breath, open your eyes and come back to your room. So for the benediction, I'd like to borrow a few words from Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. And he said, our goal should be to live life in radical amazement. Get up in the morning and look at the world in a new way that takes nothing for granted. Everything is phenomenal. Everything is incredible. Never treat life casually. So I invite you to go out today and look at the world with radical amazement.